Okay, and with that, welcome. We're rolling? Okay, and welcome to the Petersen Automotive Museum once again for Inside the MotoMan Studio. And today we're doing something, as we always do, something a bit different. I have been very fortunate to meet a very unique person. And what's unique about this guy is he's more of a story than he is a design director. And it's kind of a story like all of us car guys in the room here. Actually, raise your hands. How many of you guys sketched, and girls, how many of you guys and girls sketched cars when you were growing up? Pretty much everybody. Did they look anything like this? Well, as we do, we all, our car guy mentality, we draw cars, we get excited, and then we get old enough to buy our own cars, and then invariably we meet a girl. And then what happens when after we meet the girl, we take a bit of a detour and we stop drawing cars. At least most of us do. But our story today is not about a detour about not drawing cars. Our story today is about a guy that actually went back to drawing cars. But like most of us, how many of you guys, raise your hand, did you think, when I'm sketching cars, I'm actually going to turn this into my career? Got one guy here in a Hawaiian shirt. Big round of applause for this guy here. Well, this man not only started to draw cars again, notice there's going to be a sci-fi theme today. Look at that spaceship up there. We're going to come back to that later. This man reinvented one icon, got it into a movie, then he decided to hang out with TV stars, then he decided to reinvent another icon. So on that note, I would like you guys to welcome me in joining to the Petersen Automotive Museum inside the MotoMan Studio, Tom Peters. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, welcome.
Join us here.
Good.
Would you say all that's factual?
Maybe in part. Yeah.
Well, here in Hollywood, we have to sensationalize
Yep.
things a bit, but it's all true. It's all true. But it did not start in Detroit. It did not start with cars. It started in a land far, far away called Minnesota.
Yep. Great White North.
Great White North. What was it like growing up in Minnesota?
I'll tell you, just definitely four seasons, and you had definitely warm, which I remember as a kid, cars out all the time, people taking full advantage of the warm weather. Then in the wintertime, just figuring out ways to project and get through that period of time, but having an enormous amount of fun doing it, you know, in the snow. Being a kid, having snow is just magical, but when you grow up, it's a different perspective.
And when you were in school one time, one of your friends had his father drive him to school in a certain vehicle.
Yes.
What was that vehicle?
Yeah, it was a 63 Stingray, silver as a matter of fact, and as we found out, he must have been quite an enthusiast, and from what I gather, looking back now, Honeywell is one of the largest companies that's I think home-based in Minneapolis. And so I'm thinking that he was a Honeywell engineer there. But at any rate, he had not one but two of those Stingrays. And the reason why we knew that is because we get off the bus, and first we saw him getting out in the Stingray, and then lo and behold, I don't recall the time period it went by, it was like third grade. He shows up in a silver Stingray, and we happened to greet him at the car and looked in and noticed there was a TV screen in the center console about this
big.
In
a 63 Stingray.
In a 63 Stingray. Yes. And when you think about anyone who was cognizant of that point in time, I'm not sure there are too many of those around, but at any rate, we found out that he had two of those, and not only that, he also had he showed up in, now I realize what it was. As a kid, I didn't realize what it was a 63 Riviera, also silver. Ooh. So this guy was like, he had it going on, he understood cars, and it was like, the 63 Stingray, it was like a spaceship landed, you know, came in.
Spaceship.
Awesome. Yep, it was like a spaceship. Flying
saucer. We're going to be covering spaceships quite a bit with you, my friend.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I'll tell you what, it left an impression to me that has been with me to this day, and I'll tell you, everyone who's been in here, and everyone remembers their first ride in either a Corvette or a Camaro or some enthusiast car, it stays with you the rest of your life. In this case, it's very inspiring.
Absolutely. So it stayed with you from this point.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that. But I like the way you part your hair now. That's good.
Yeah.
And here's some family pics. But
yeah.
Now, it obviously, these kind of things affect people.
I was trying to figure out some way we could get them to take the long route around to where I lived in Chaska, Minnesota. And unfortunately, I couldn't get him, convince him, so it dropped me off and I went on my way. But that is another, probably those two experiences have stayed with me and inspired, has been inspirational in my whole life.
So much so that it inspired you to start a cottage industry when you were very young with these.
Yeah.
Starting, this is 1968.
Yeah.
This is 1969.
Oh my God, yeah.
Now the next one, I got to be honest with you, I'm a little concerned you were drawing this particular car. Who can name what that is?
Oh my God. Yeah. Maverick.
Yeah, and then you finally got some good taste in 1971.
Yeah.
And in 72.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know the date on this one, but notice, okay, look at this picture.
Okay, so let me explain these things. Let me look at another frame.
Well, we're going to get to that. Look at this picture here.
Oh, yeah.
There's a maturity to this one.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't just sketching for sketching's sake.
Yeah.
What did you do with these sketches?
Well, probably not this sketch, but the first ones. This is back in, I think, 7th grade, okay, 1968, 69. Yes, 7th grade, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, 7th and 8th. And it was kind of interesting because I walked in here today and the first car I saw was Ed Big Daddy Roth. I think what was the Bandit that was down there. You know, fortuitous, because I'll tell you, the one person that I would give credit to get me into car design without even realizing it is Ed Big Daddy Roth. And I don't know if they still do it today. I think you still see him in the back of Hot Rod magazine. But in Hot Rod, in that day, there was a 2-page spread of all these T-shirt designs with these, with the, the hairy arm coming out with a shifter and blown big blocks or Hemis or whatever, and the headers coming down. And at the time, gassers were and altereds were like all the rage. And as a kid, these are like cartoon characters, so I tried to emulate those. And that's what these are. I'm trying to figure out how to draw these cars so you can see the straight axle influence and jacked up and just looking pretty kind of caricature cartoonish. But what I would do is I would go in and kind of sweet talk the ladies in the office of the school. And back then, they didn't have Xerox machines. They were mimeograph machines. I think you had to load up the original and you kind of, I think. And I would get them to pump out 10 or 15, 25 of these on 8.5 by 11s. And after you're done, like, smelling it, I don't know if you guys are old enough.
This is a family show here.
You'd smell that, whatever chemical they used on that paper. It was like, I don't know what it was, kids. It was. At any rate, so then I would sell them for $0.25 a piece, and they sold like hotcakes, And then if they had a couple of bucks, I would take a magic marker and actually sketch one on the back of a T-shirt for them,
And how old were you when doing this?
Probably 12 to 14 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was fun, but I mean.
So really think about it. So you drew this car in 1969.
Not having a clue where cars were designed, where they came from, or what design was, or even that you could even go to school and learn, or get paid for, go to school and learn to get paid to draw cars. I just did them because I loved it. And I think any of you here that, obviously you're here because you love cars, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. There's a passion that carries through your whole life.
Well, so much so that the $2.50 you made on this actually went to buy that car you have sitting outside.
Well, yeah. I think I spent that on a pair of, probably a model car kit at the local Rexall drugstore.
Yes, or a Mustang.
Yeah, or a Mustang. Yep.
So then you went possibly to the most opposite place you could go to after Minnesota.
I'm talking cultural. Yeah, you've seen the movie Dazed and Confused? My daughter says, Dad, you lived it. I mean, look at that. Look at between the collars, the cheesy mustache, and the hairdo. The only thing I wish I still had was that hair.
But you also had something really cool down there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're into go-karts, and my brother and I and friends. We looked. wherever we could, anything you could ride that had a motor on it, you just were compelled to get on, you know?
You also had well, it's funny because your friends were very compelled to get on you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's my Great Dane Rowdy. One day my dad was upstairs shaving, and out of the blue came this black Great Dane, ran up the stairs of the house and jumped on him while he had a razor in his hand. So at that point I said, someday I'm going to have a dog like this. This was having to be a neighbor dog, and I got one, and he was awesome. Big dog.
So we have an audience of Chevy people here. Do you want me to show them your first car?
My first, sure. I mean, if this is like, you know, let it all out, I'm good with that.
Yeah. Okay. Luckily, we
and then remember,
need a gun permit here.
Yes. However, maybe frame this up a little bit. Is that I moved from Minneapolis to near Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a small town called Zachary. And this is the culturally, this was the car.
Oh, this is definitely
the brand, I will say.
But you also made some modifications.
Yep, I did. Yeah. 68 Galaxy, and this car, my mom and dad helped me buy it, and I remember seeing just about the same time the movie California Kid, and totally enamored with flames. And I mentioned I did model cars. Well, I thought, well, I could just mask it off, and just like you would a giant model car, I actually took model paints and painted those first flames on there.
And tell us what paint booth you used.
Down there, they don't have a lot of garages at carports, so you paint it in the carport, which is exposed to the air. But luckily, it was lacquer, so it dried really fast, and you could sand it and polish it.
And then you decided to move up, but again, in front of a Chevy audience. Yeah, it gets pretty ugly here.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah. But I got to say, this was a pretty cool car, too. You know,
it was,
and just as a comment to that, too, I'm a solid Chevy guy now, obviously. However, I think that's what's exciting about this whole genre and this whole thing about muscle cars, enthusiast cars. Of course, it all builds upon each other. We all have, I think, a very unified passion.
I want you to remember what he just said, because we are going to learn that lesson in a very graphic way later. Okay. Here's another image with this car.
Before we painted it.
Yeah. Notice the mustache.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then it was this vehicle that you decided to make a trip across the country to go to some newfangled art school.
Yeah.
What was that school?
Well, Art Center College of Design. Again, throughout the course of the early incredible artwork there, people say, "Oh, you should send that to Ford, or you should send that to Detroit." I had no idea. I mean, kids today, you have access to the whole world. Back then, you know, I lived this world through magazines, primarily Hot Rod, you know, Carcraft, Motor Trend occasionally, what you saw on TV, movies, but not having the internet, kind of exclusive, especially down south. It was pretty tight. But
actually, step back and kind of paint a picture of the jobs you were doing when you were working in Louisiana.
Louisiana, probably the main job was I'd help people work on their cars, primarily painting, but the paid job, I worked in a paper mill. My mom was kind of the payroll officer there, and they had summer jobs for high school students, and which really motivated me to get a degree somewhere. Because I didn't want to work in 130-degree heat with 130% humidity. From 11 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was brutal, but the money was awesome, helped me pay for college, and but it was inspiration in another sort. But at any rate, so I went to school, two schools, at the time University of Southwestern Louisiana, which is now connected with LSU, and then Louisiana Tech, which is, if this is Louisiana, kind of like what we do with Michigan. Louisiana's not as similar, except it's got a short thumb on it. Up here, there's a school in Ruston called Louisiana Tech, and my major was advertising and illustration because I drew everything. Not only cars, I drew people, airplanes, nature, whatever. I just drew everything.
You did.
But at any rate, I accidentally came across in one of the classes, bored out of our minds. A guy had a square catalog. It was orange color. Hey, let me check that out. I looked over and it's like, well, everything I'd been exposed to and done up to the point, at this point in my life, it's like, open it up, it was like an epiphany. I saw these wonderful examples of cars and products and beautifully rendered and models. And I used to build model planes, model cars, worked on cars, drew everything. It was perfect. I never knew it existed. I knew right then I had to go out to the art center. So to your point, actually the first car I went out there in was that Galaxy, which it blew up in Lubbock, Texas. My pal and I, we rebuilt the motor really quick in the carport, and it was a 390. And you know those things you get at the time, I think it was Napa Hardware Store for, you know, honing the cylinders, and you put it on the end of your drill, and it's got the little metal balls on it, and that was our precision level of honing out the cylinder. Well, I remember my pal, he smoked cigarettes, and he would even drop ashes in there. And so we buttoned it up, and no wonder
this
that thing.
Coming from a Ford mechanic.
Yeah, that's no wonder it blew up. I'm afraid I'm surprised it got that far because I had to put a quart of oil in. I stopped because I knew what was happening. Bought 2 cases of recycled oil, and I had to put a quart in every 30 miles. Imagine the spark plugs. I forgot to get the spark plugs.
But then you got to Art Center.
Yes, I made it to
You
California.
started working on unique projects. And then you had a very creative way of financing your Art Center education.
Yep.
Specifically how you ate. You had found somebody else to feed you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I didn't marry my wife because of my mother-in-law, but I'll tell you, she sure did play a major role because they lived right down the street from see the happy face? I wasn't happy till I met them. It was like I used to go into the Ralph's, right? And go over to the area where they sell the bologna butts, and then we'd go to Hostess and get like the week-old bread. So we had crunchy sandwiches. And then
crouton sandwiches.
Yeah, crouton sandwiches. I didn't know it would be gourmet someday. But at any rate, I was at Art Center at the time, obviously, and we were down in the shops. It was like 2 or 3 markers or a handful of pencils, and I was done out of money, you know. So at any rate, so being an Italian family, come on, have something to eat, and you eat like a big pile of wonderfully homemade pasta with sauce, and eat some more, and I think I went from I think about 125 pounds back up to my usual weight of 175, you know, just there alone. So.
But you got the girl.
Yep, got the girl. She's lovely, and that's, you know, she's been my best supporter and my inspiration my whole life.
And then the girl stays in California. You go and do an internship where?
In Detroit at General Motors, and I will tell you, this was a make or break situation. Actually, most internships when you're juniors and seniors, and I was at a point now where the money was running out and I couldn't live on, man cannot live by pasta alone. So I was either going to have to go figure out something else to do, or I was going to apply, put a portfolio together and put it in with the juniors and seniors who were absolutely fantastic. You know, they were like, you know, gods to us as the underclassmen, compete with these guys for these internships. Well, those guys that I used to be able to talk to and look up to, and they would help me out, after the word came back that they chose, you know, thank God, my portfolio over theirs, they didn't talk to me that much anymore. So, but anyway, I was fortunate. So I was invited to go out to General Motors Design Center and join them in the internship program.
You were working on unique projects.
1978. I worked on great projects, was exposed. Again, coming from Louisiana, I mentioned not having huge exposure to a lot of the automotive history and where cars came from. This was like going to another planet of a technologically advanced race. It was totally amazing to me, and I knew I was in the right place and loved it. I just soaked up every second that I existed in that, and it's one of those things too where if you ever have a chance to go on an internship, please do it, because your learning curve kind of does this and it goes just right to the moon, you know. And not only that, but you get to meet the people, the leaders, they get to know you. So this was just a one short summer, but guess what? I learned all this, plus they paid you. And when I returned to Art Center with a few bucks, I was eligible for a scholarship, and I received that, so that helped propel me the rest of the way through school. And fortunately, when Chuck Jordan came out to usually the leadership of the design organizations of all the companies, Ford, Chrysler, GM, Honda, Toyota, would come out and interview you and look at portfolios. I knew right then, having had that experience, I had to go to General Motors, and the goal was to work on Camaros and Corvettes, obviously.
But before you go to General Motors, funny you mentioned the moon.
Yep.
Your senior thesis.
Yeah, senior thesis. I mentioned I like to draw everything, and cars are passion, but also I will tell you a passion of mine is just anything science fiction, spacecraft, and the technology that goes into that. And coming from, we lived in, to me, this is just a personal perspective, I've mentioned this before, is again, another thing that kicked off my sources for inspiration other than cars was, I kind of jokingly say anybody who did not exist or was not cognizant and not around in the year 1969, which I feel is the coolest year ever in history, just can't be as cool somehow. But at any rate,
you had a very interesting comparison about that last time we got together.
But at any rate, so a man walking on the moon was just amazing. Right up there with Jimi Hendrix lighting his guitar on fire, Z28s, 427 motors, 426 Hemis, 428 Cobra Jets. All these muscle cars were just really at their peak at that time. And as a kid, seeing that around, it just, it was just absolutely amazing. And again, I mentioned it's super inspiring. So that got me into the science fiction end of it. And one of the things I wanted to do, other than cars, because I drew everything, was there was a lot of discussion then. I don't recall, somebody wrote a thesis on in the industrialization of space, and specifically where you would capture asteroids, bring them in, mine them, and they wanted to try to figure out some way to get the minerals and then process them and get the basic materials back to Earth to use them. So I came up with a method to where you would capture the asteroids, bring it back to a marshalling station. This is where you'd bring crews in, but and then you would have a ship that would have like a solar. I think a couple of the first ones were some of the images there, where you'd have a solar array and it would concentrate the light of the sun, and it would melt down the asteroid, and then they would extract the valuable minerals.
Is this something you are dreaming up, or is this something that you researched out?
I researched it, and it's just being coming from a visual college, it just helped to try to explain that in a very visual way. So,
and you put this in front of Chuck Jordan and showed the design director of GM.
Yeah, I think he said, yeah, great. Show me some cars. Yeah, no, I don't think he appreciated it. But your thesis was to do something that was something other than your major.
So much so you got a job at GM again.
Yes. Well, I'd love to have you come and join us at General Motors.
But then, as the story goes, you meet a girl, and there's a detour with the girl.
Yep.
And the Italian girl comes back in the picture.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
And
what
happens?
Well, we get married.
Yeah.
Yep. Brief story there. As I think maybe your point you're getting to is hired, and it was 1980 when I graduated and was hired. At that time, the economy as well as the business is cyclical. It happened to be down. They had just one opportunity. We were an item at the time at school, and planning on getting married someday. And she was a product major. There was a lot more opportunities in the product field than was automotive field at the time. So she split off and decided to go with Texas Instruments in Lubbock, Texas. Remember, my car blew up. It's amazing how stuff comes around. Plus, my cousin, who was a
sure, I could find a country music song about this.
Probably could. Lubbock plays something about Lubbock that kind of keeps coming into my life. But anyways, so the car blew up in Lubbock. I happen to have my cousin, who we really looked up to, who really exposed me to cars as well, and Fords. He had a 428 Cobra Jet Mustang. He was a Top Gun pilot for the Marines, and he flew F-4 Phantoms, and after he got out of that, he wanted to keep the same kind of excitement, so he elected to do crop dusting, and that's where he was in Lubbock. He helped me put the car back together to get to California. But anyway, so she goes back to Lubbock. worked for Texas Instruments. And so I'm in a quandary. I go to General Motors, we're separated. And so I'm at the place where I've always wanted to be all my life. She's at a wonderful job, and but we want to be together. So that's the power of love, I think, maybe even over cars, because I said, you know, I got to be with her. Things aren't happening in Detroit right now. We waited for a while. I said, so I walked into Chuck Jordan's office, who was like an iconic industry
How old are you at this
captain.
point?
Oh my gosh, probably 24, 24.
And you walk in
Yeah,
too.
so I walk in and say, Chuck, I'm going to quit. But I said, before you put me in a cannon and shoot me out of here, let me tell you the story. And he seemed to understand. And he said, I said, if you ever got two spaces here, let me know, we'll come right back. So after I went down, I worked for Texas Instruments for 2 years.
And you did something very different.
Yeah, very different. That was kind of cool because the guy who ran Texas Instruments Industrial Design Department said I would never hire a car stylist. So and I always like challenges, so I said, okay, well, I'm going to show you, dude. So because we have majors and minors, I majored in transportation car design, but I minored in product design. So I quickly put together a product portfolio and sent it to him. He said, oh, we should have this guy. And now they didn't know that we were an item. And Carolyn down there said, hey, you might want to take a look at this guy. He's pretty good. So she was an advocate down there. So I went down. His name is Gene Sulik. Also, I'm so fortunate. You go through your life, and there are people in your life that are just, through no design, you come across, and they end up being mentors in your life to guide you in your life. And so I would tell young people that are here, take note to people that you may not be aware of, you intersect in your life, because they are amazing influences and they're just fantastic. Anyway, so Gene hired me down there. He was like the Chuck Jordan of industrial design for Texas Instruments. And I will tell you, this is one of those hardcore tech places at the time. And this had the glass rooms with the people in the bunny suits doing the slicing the silicone and everything. But here's this little industrial design
You're doing
center.
cool stuff here. I mean, look at
very cool.
Wearable
very cool.
computers.
Yep, we worked on the first laptop computers, and at that time it was all about power and battery supply. The screens they had, the thin screens. Mm-hmm. Then also, you remember the Speak and Spell? They had just introduced that. My first assignment was to do a smaller version of that, a less expensive version. And at the time, we worked with, if you recall the movie E.T., the Extraterrestrial, again, the things you're exposed to, you don't have no expectation to in life. It's just amazing. So, Tom, why don't you put together some concept sketches, and we're going to send you out to Amblin Studios and talk to Steven Spielberg and his producer, Kathleen Kennedy. If you ever look on the movies, the scrolling credits and stuff, look for the name Kathleen Kennedy. And again, this is my perspective. She's the ones that really make it happen. I think he's the visionary, but Kathleen Kennedy, look for that name on his movies. She was an amazing person. I remember Steven coming in, and he had tennis shorts on and a tennis ball in each pocket. So that was quite a first impression of him. But anyways, Kathleen, we worked with her in getting the Speak and Spell into the movie, and that's this device he uses in that configuration where ET phone home. And that's where the connection is. But we did all sorts of wonderful things: children's learning aids, watches, and again, this is a super high-tech military company, but they're trying to break into consumer electronics at the time.
And
so
just to be clear, this is early '80s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is 1980.
There's no MacBook. There's no nothing.
No.
And look what you're designing.
They were the first laptop computers. Mm-hmm. And then they also had speech recognition. The barcodes you go in on your Nestle's Quick and your cereal boxes or boxes of soap. They were utilizing that to where you could scan underneath the words in books, and it would, in artificial speech at the time, would come out of the speaker. It would read it for you. So they had a speak and read. So that was another one of my very initial assignments, how I could build
And they're coming to you with these ideas, or you're going to them and say, how about we do this?
Well, they would come to us with technology, and we would have these brainstorming sessions and come up with different ways of applying them. And two primary areas. One was children's learning aids. The other one was for specifically, and we focused on children, for handicapped kids who could not communicate verbally. So we found that incredibly intriguing and just wonderfully rewarding, because we would meet with these children and work with them. And I'll tell you, every bit as much rewarding as, we're talking about cars today, but which I think is incredible satisfaction. But when you when you're dealing with human beings and extending their capability, there's nothing more rewarding than that, especially children.
And these are all, just so you guys know, these are all in chronological order as he progressed.
Yeah.
But then what you do usually when you're a young designer, it's called hubcap duty.
Yeah,
You get to work on wheels on turbocharged Corvettes.
Yeah, and now they do all this in computer. We still do hand sketching, but many things are done in computer. But that time it was all hand done. These are markers and pencils, and this is.
This actually made it to production.
Yeah, that was my first production part actually. In fact, I mentioned that thing to my pal here already. That one is in here, I think, that has these wheels. What was it, 84? I think I believe it is. And this is a picture of Ilmor Indy engine, which was what the mid-engine Indy concept was designed around, to display that joint venture between the Lotus Ilmor Indy engine that was going to be for a mid-engine concept for Corvette at the time.
And this kind of came to existence through Callaway, didn't it?
Yeah, I think for Callaway did that, but this was a precursor to the first. Oh, wait, no, I guess now if someone told me there was like actually a Z01 package back in the 60s, I was unaware of that. But for the first, like in the 80s, the first Z01 that we all know, the wide body, and they were looking at twin turbos first before they did the supercharger. And again, here you can kind of maybe see a link here between the stuff I did at school.
Literally a link.
And yeah, a link.
Literally.
Pun. Yeah, pardon the pun. Pardon the pun. And then Texas Instruments. And then, because we were always looking at different ways to apply technology to cars, obviously. And now, we have, this is way before, look at 84, this is before OnStar, in which we got involved with, the folks with the folks that, got us the satellite connectivity with that.
So in 84, you are literally connecting the idea of OnStar, which, if we want to hear that car again out there,
yeah.
That Z28.
Somebody's going to have to go in there and physically. I mean, you don't want to remote start a car like that. You want to go in and get your hands on it and start it. You know, you want to do that. You
want to manhandle that car.
Yeah, you manhandle. Yeah. Oh, well, but anyways, what's interesting about these two is the other influence I would tell you. Just robots were also science fiction robots time. They had the Gundam robots that had the antennas and were also very influencing along with aircraft and race cars, and applying technology to the cars were always a goal and objective in doing these concept cars.
This is 85, and that to me looks very familiar.
Yeah, yeah, those mid-80s Camaros. Again, the Corvette Indy that I mentioned, the early sketches, and that one model had that kind of funny shape.
But didn't this become the early 90s F-body?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you customized the Beretta.
Yeah, well, I didn't really customize that. That was the Beretta was done in the same studio. It was Chevy 3, which kind of was hallowed ground, and I was fortunate and blessed and honored to be asked to, after those scale models, to become part of that team under Jerry Palmer, who was the design chief at the time. But that studio was responsible at the time for Corvette Camaro and Beretta during that period.
Was this done in Chevy 3?
No, I think that was done much earlier than that in some different studios called Studio X, which were a number of places. That's before my time. And this one, by the way, I mean, that does look like a flying saucer. Peter Brock had something to do with this car, obviously, and this was one of the iconic cars that served as inspiration as well. But that was done referred to as Studio X, which still, in some form, has existed since the 50s.
The 50s, wow. And then, were you doing some artwork outside of school?
Yes. This was a rough sketch for a painting I did about, I think, 80 feet by 80 inches by 40 for, at the time, he was executive director for GM Motorsports, Herb Fischel, who was inspirational and was a driving force to get Corvette back into the Le Mans series, the GT class international series. And so he wanted some concept work and a model done and some imagery to help sell the idea. So Jerry asked me to create some images, and this is like a very rough, that image there is about this big. I did little thumbnail sketches for this huge painting that I did that I presented to him, and along with some models, and he used that to go take that and to sell it to corporate management, including the board of directors at the time, and just a just an incredible visionary individual. And he is the gentleman that got Corvette on that hallowed track Le Mans in France. which I think is awesome. And these sketches kind of were used to do the imagery to get that happening for him from a design standpoint.
What did this?
That's a Beretta.
That's a Beretta as well.
Just a fast pen sketch. And again, here I mentioned about the mimeograph, the Xeroxes in school. Again, things seem to, what goes around comes around. This is a Xerox copy of just a pen sketch that I did. We would do millions of these and pin them up on the wall. Then we'd have Chuck Jordan come in and evaluate them and make selections. And from there, we'd go to scale model right to full-size clay.
Then your personal life, I guess, you're starting to drive some of your cars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stage 2 of you know, that kind of awkward period of the 70s and 80s. Yeah, this was one of the cars that I was fortunate enough to be involved with, like mid-80s, 85, 86, somewhere down there.
And who were some of these people?
Let's see. There's my wife in the center, obviously. Chuck Jordan is just to the right. And, excuse me, some of these folks I think are actually with GM of Japan. They came to visit us.
Okay. And then you started working on a particular project.
Back
a very unique project.
Back into Corvette, and again, throughout history, there had always been. Now this is a little bit out of sequence because that's the model I was kind of talking about. That first sketch that had the lid up and the jet fighter led to this scale model, which in GM design staff at the time they'd take, you know, they would catch Chuck's eye and say, take that model and put it on Hollywood and Vine. Not here, but in Design Center, which was like this hallowed area. If you did a model or some neat artwork, it's where these major hallways intersect, one coming from the executive area, one from the major studios area. So it was a highlighted area for probably at the time the hot artwork, and they selected the scale model to go there, and that's where Jerry recognized it and brought us into the Corvette studio. So and it was fortunate enough, that time was when we started this mid-engine concept.
Of a Corvette?
Corvette.
Mid-engine Corvette. In mid-80s.
Which had been, throughout I think Corvette history, had always been different examples of that, you know.
And you worked on this all the way through.
This is actually, at the time, Studio X, which there's not a lot of pictures of around. And why is it Studio X? Is because, you know, high energy, highly emotional projects like this attract a lot of attention. So we call it quiet time, where folks aren't just walking in. It kind of keeps it out of the sight of maybe even higher level executives, so you can get the idea down without a lot of distractions and input, because everybody has an idea what the future Corvette wants to be.
Are high-level executives allowed to go to this studio?
Oh yeah, high-level executives are usually allowed to go wherever they want. That thing always swipes. They always had the time that they had keys to the studios or a code you punched in, a mechanical box. But if it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, so we would put these projects, and this happened, as I mentioned, even into the 50s, or since the 50s, these little out-of-the-way corner places way down in the catacombs in the basement. And so when we were ready to show something, that's when we would pull it out and present it.
So Project X was kind of like your Skunk Works.
Our Studio X was a Skunk Works, yeah. And I was fortunate to be part of that. This is actually a shot taken in Italy. We modeled the car in Studio X in Detroit, cast it in the shops, which I will tell you, that our shops can build anything, I mean anything. They cast the body and they put it on a plane and shipped it to Torino, Italy. This is a shop in the northern part of Torino, outside the Autostrada, a place called Chekamp. And again, kind of Italian connection with family and all that. You know, what you find once you go out there is that there's all these family connections between all those companies. Because I remember being in that place, there was Lancias, there were Ferraris, Alphas. And that's where we actually built this concept car in Italy and shipped it back for the Detroit Auto Show at the time. And this is a static model, but this model I felt had a lot of influence on design at the time, because think about this. This model came out when all the cars were, you remember, mid-80s, very angular and square. I mean, based on kind of influence from Giorgetto Giugiaro, kind of a very influential Italian designer at the time.
My first car was designed by him.
Yep, whacker to present to him. So that's what we did, and if you look at the handle closely, there's a cigarette lighter on it, and No, those wheels in the back that I mentioned, that they had that rough sketch. But anyway, so being a kid, they don't necessarily invite you to an executive retirement party, but I guess it went over pretty well.
Yeah. Or you were trying to get into the next edition of Lawnmower Man.
That could be. Now there's something you could branch out. It could be a spinoff.
There you go. This is Mr. Movie Man here. And then, kind of back to the spaceship thing.
Yeah.
Look at some of the designs here. Look at
Pontiac
specifically the lights here. And this, what is this car?
These are a precursor to, you move around different studios, and two rival studios were the Pontiac studio and the Chevy 3. And they move you around. So I was in Pontiac for a little while, and while I was in there, had a chance to work on my timing and my luck was just amazing throughout my life, I think. So I went to the Pontiac studio, said, we're going to do a concept car, and I think we're going to call it the Banshee, because they did a Banshee back in the, I think, early 70s, maybe late 60s.
Yeah.
Then it had a Ferrari V12 in it. In fact, they had it in our studio the other day because we had to bring our kids to work day. And they wanted to do Banshee too.
That car runs. You drive that car.
Oh, yeah, and this one does too. This was to highlight a modular V8, actually. It was two 4-cylinders put together. I forget the specific name for it, but it was a prototype engine they were going to go take forward into production, which never happened. So this was a concept car done at that time.
Wasn't the original Banshee that silver car kind of looked like a small Corvette? It had the fastback and the roof could come off as well?
It might have been, but the one I remember was red in Bill Mitchell era.
Oh, yeah.
And it was based off of a Firebird front engine.
Bob Lutz sat in that chair and told us that Bill Mitchell got GM to pay $12 grand for that engine.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's before my time also, but it still is very, very powerful.
And here's the car.
Yep. Yeah.
And here's you driving it.
Oh, yeah. That is at, I think it's Portland International Raceway, because at the time it was coming out of spring, and we needed a place that was kind of warm. We thought, and actually it turned out it was very sunny there. Usually up in that portion of the country it's not very sunny, but we had beautiful weather, and took it up there for a press event.
Then you're deciding to have some fun in
design. I've always been a believer of working hard, and I tell my guys even to this day, what we do is very serious, but you got to have fun. So I put those two together, serious fun. So we have our moments, and it's a high pressure environment, high pressure job. Stakes are, customers, people that buy these vehicles have super high expectations, and guess what? These are serious machines that are capable of impressive performance.
Yeah.
And so they have to be developed, designed, engineered, and used in a very serious manner. But with all that, you have to have, being humans, you have to have a little bit of pressure release, and we
need therapy, right?
So yeah.
So in '94, you found some therapy.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, found some therapy. Exactly. Yeah, this is right out here. I drove the car today. Going back to that '69 sketch I did, I think that was one of the first sketches I did.
Yeah.
And it was impressed by that, the '69 Camaro, obviously. But that's one of those things I always had in the back of my mind. Never could afford one, but after a few years at General Motors, and then plus the fact I was asked to go out early '94 to run our Advanced Concept Center here in California. At the time, it was Newbury Park up by Thousand Oaks. And I had in my mind, if I could ever someday come across a first or second gen Camaro, I was going to buy it, because again, part of my inspiration, I came across one in Huntington Beach, a stripped out body, exactly what I wanted, but I wanted to modify it. Paid at Auto Trader, the guy wanted paid $1,900 for that body, back then. So it was pretty cool, and it was kind of an interesting situation. If I have a minute here, because I walk up to this neat little bungalow house in Huntington Beach, and I knew right then the guy was in trouble. I knew the story because I pulled in. This car's in the driveway. I could tell it didn't have motor because it was lifted up on chocks, and it was painted black at the time over white. And the garage door was up, and inside was the front end of a straight axle 57 Chevy Nomad, black flames with a twin tunnel port, big black sticking out of it. And so he sees me pull in with my pal, and he comes out the front door, and I swear, he had 7 kids following him, and none of them were that any taller than that. So you know the conversation that happened in that house. You know, one of those got to go. You know, so I happened to be the guy that got down there first. So I took this. I met Chuck Lombardo at California Street Rods, and so they did the majority of this car, but I worked on it at the time. But then after a couple of years there, I was transferred back to Detroit. So they put most of it back together and shipped it back, and then we continued to do some work on it.
You know, it's funny, there's a saying, you can
driving
take the boy out of Louisiana, but you can't take the Louisiana of the boy.
No, but that's my daughter's truck. That was not my idea.
Oh, you blame your daughter. She's not here to defend herself.
No, but she can defend herself, believe me. Because she has some of that Italian blood in her.
Yeah.
She's like her like her grandmother.
But it's funny, you also bring your family into your passion. Yeah. So here's an interesting sketch.
I think they drove into the passion. They had it.
Actually, I think you beat it into their head from an early age.
Maybe. Well, she just showed up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were exposed. My kids were exposed to it, and I didn't push them or anything, but they seemed to gravitate.
And she does track days to this day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Off and on. She's done it a little while. She's got a real job now.
Yeah, with her own Camaro.
Yep, with the Camaro she did. Yep.
Okay. So now we're moving on to '96, and you worked on another project, and you decided you're going to have a very unique unveiling, at least a location for your boss.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did. I was really before I went to California, actually, I ran an advanced studio, and one of our projects was to do a counterpoint or an alternate proposal for the 5th generation Corvette. And I love this. What has been in the culture is they set up competitions between studios, and it improves the breed. And I liken it to coming from a swimming family. Is that if you're swimming for time by yourself, you're going to get a pretty good time if you push yourself. If your buddy's swimming next to you, you're going to be faster, more than likely. So that's the same philosophy, set up a competition. So we developed an alternate proposal for, at the time, John Cafaro, colleague of mine, was
great guy. He's the one that just led the new Impala.
Yep, exactly.
And he ran Corvette for many years.
Did. Yes, he did. And during the time, he was in charge of developing the C5. And Chuck asked us to do an alternate in my studio, and I thought, again, coming back around, planes as inspiration. There's a reserve Air Force air base out there, Selfridge Air Force Base. I said, wouldn't it be wonderful to have these car models come out and park them next to F-16s? And so that went over like gangbusters. And so Chuck Jordan at the time, again, we're always nervous with a boss. We didn't tell him where we were going. We loaded everybody up on a bus, and him included, and we drove out to the air base. Now I got to remember, this is Michigan, the end of April. So if you look closely, there's snow flurries blowing by there. It was a little chilly, but it was an awesome event. And
then this is the design dome.
Yeah, this is the design dome on the patio.
Second car in is that car.
Yep, and I mentioned the competition. Chuck and Jerry Palmer also invited Fioravanti, Italian coach builder, to do a proposal as well in scale form, and he came out to join us as well. So the first two models there you see, the black one is John, heavily influenced by the GTP series at the time. And then the red one behind that is one we developed in the Advanced Studio. And then yet another one, now those were static models, and yet another one is the Stingray 3. Some of those you might be familiar with, was a drivable Corvette concept proposal that was done out here in the West Coast California Advanced Studio at the time.
So at this point, I know we talked a little bit about your car, but you're actually, here's some proof you actually are doing the work on this car. Yeah,
that was, I think, last summer, actually. That's putting that motor back in. My friend joined me here, who is an avid car, specifically Camaro nut. Art Burgess joined me out here. He said, yeah, Tom, you're going out there, I gotta go. Petersen Museum. He helped me, did a lot of the engine work. Where I sketched cars since I was a kid, he built big blocks since he was a kid, so he knows just a thing or two about them. So again, we didn't have a carport. We had a garage, and it was kind of a family. You know, it takes a village to build a big block in your garage. And so we did that. And had a lot of fun. this picture of my garage, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, he's cool. A lot of friends in the neighborhood. My Mopar buddy here, unfortunately, he's Mopar, but we love him. But there's cars in and out. In fact, my daughter, you know, the truck, and I think she came up with this. We're known as, she named us, Dad, you guys are like a bunch of you guys are like thrill-billies because you always have these hot rods working on them, wrenching on them. We do slot cars in the garage in the wintertime, talking about passing the time away. Now we're recently into old snowmobiles. Always something going on with motors in them, with wheels or whatever, and that garage is always busy with cars.
We got it all
cigars.
wrong here in California. We got to hang out with you.
Oh, come on over. Come on over.
Business.
You'll have fun. So she named us the Bloom, pretty much for our corporate rear-wheel drive front V8 engine platform from Australia. And so, with the help of some very talented designers and sculptors and engineers, we developed this Buick concept here, the Velite, and actually, again, lineage. The designer that worked with me on that was by the name of Sang-Yup Lee, who, for those who may or may not know, was one of the designers that I worked with very closely in developing the 6th generation Corvette and then the new Camaro. A key designer. He really penned this design here for me.
This kind of foretold the front of the Enclave.
It did. It did. And I said, we have to there's something that, you know, we had that, everybody was trying to do that oval, classic driven Buick grille, and I wasn't having it. I said, that's not going to work. So we said, can we reinvent a modern version of the waterfall grille? And at the time, this was very influential, and it was very fresh for the time, you know.
So, by a show of hands, how many people want GM to build something like this?
Oh.
Okay, Monty,
that's
can
going
you get
back
that
a ways.
down?
That's going back a
Bring
ways.
that back to Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need that one. And then you decided to do something even cooler.
Oh, yeah. Again, invited to do a car called the Cadillac 16. Again, just the variety of experiences and different flavors. And I tell you what, it's a mental. That's one of the reasons why I lost a lot of hair because there's a lot of mental gear shifting, and it just fried all the hair right out of my head. So, but at any rate, because you're thinking 24 hours a day, you're thinking of stuff. And again, I was fortunate enough to lead the design team and engineering team to develop the 16 concept based around newly developed. And I would tell you, for those who may not know this, there's Corvette roots with this car too. There's this wonderful interconnectivity of all things in nature. This actually, the engine, although it was built specifically, there's only a few of the V16s that were built, but it's an engineered Siamese C6R motor. It's Corvette.
So Corvette racing motor and a Cadillac designed to be 16 with
work 16
hood opens like this.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that was a runner. You could
Oh
drive
yeah,
that.
oh yeah, it was running. That was. It said they advertised horsepower as being adequate, but it was well over 1,000 horsepower.
This car still exists. This car lives in the GM Heritage Center.
It's a drivable.
And it's a drivable car.
Full. It worked with Alcoa, aluminum frame. That part on the previous where I'm working on the cowl, that thing was machined out of one giant solid block of aluminum.
It's incredible.
It's an
a
amazing
thing
car.
to behold when you see it in person.
I tell you, I'm very honored to be associated with this car, and it.
And they were thinking of building this.
Oh yeah, very seriously.
Before the world imploded, that could have been something.
Yeah, even if we didn't go into production, there were folks from the Middle East said, we will pay you anything to build us one or two of those.
Yeah. But then you went back to reality, and your reality was?
Corvette.
It's a hell of a reality.
Yeah, it is.
I feel terrible for you.
Yeah, I was then, at that time, promoted to design chief for the Corvette studio. So again, just not only blessed, but extremely honored to even be associated with, let alone asked to lead the team that came up with, where I was responsible for the first totally production version of it. So this is a representation of the kind of the core team. Again, these are a small portion of the group that really backs up that car. This is the design team that represents the sculptors. At the time, that's when we were really getting into computer sculpting. But I'll tell you, maybe, I don't know if there's a point in here, just I'm an avid believer in hand-on physical sculpting as well. So we had this wonderful synergy of technology, kind of like the earlier sketches, and then artistry of real human beings working on clay with their hands, because I'm convinced that the soul and the passion and the talent is conveyed right into the clay, into the math that we hand off, the math, we call them math sculptors or computer sculptors, or I call them that at any rate. And then the physical sculptors that translates into the steel blocks that stamp the metal, and then to the actual body parts. I think that passion comes through, and that's why folks like you, there's something that, and so to have a car that I was involved with and responsible for, being in the same vicinity with car, well, the Aerovette's the second one, which was done for Paris. In the 70s, that originally had a four channel rotor Wankel in it. It's got a 400 in it now because they couldn't keep the dang thing running or cooled. And then the 59 Stingray in the background there. So they had 4 bays, and they're always working on maintaining these, because they're one-off prototypes, obviously. So they take special care not only in repairing them, but we're responsible for handling them. So when you see them at shows delivered, it's different than having a corporate sponsored or a division sponsored vehicle. These are incredibly wonderful vehicles. So being in this hallowed ground, it's kind of like a Studio X for garages.
So you think this guy has a cool job? I mean, basically design director of Camaro and Corvette and General Motors. There's another guy that this is his office, and he tunes up this car, Mike Erdody. Great guy. Hello, Mike. Say hi to Mike. Great guy.
He's got some stories.
He's got amazing stories.
If you think Madman is pretty interesting TV show, the stories I've heard about those people in that time, in that period, are just incredible.
He maintained the first ever concept car, Buick Y job. It's his job to maintain that car and
drive
and exercise.
Drive.
12-cylinder Firebird with a Ferrari engine. He drives it. Yeah. Feel terrible.
He drove it in the studio the day before, actually Thursday, because we had kids bring your kids to work.
He's also charged with this overseeing the restoration of these sinkhole cars.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, very interesting guy.
That's going to be a wonderful adventure as well. There was a silver lining to that cloud.
So I think we should all give Mr. Erdody a big round of applause.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike
Erdody.
Hopefully you'll see this.
Oh, I'll make him see
it.
He's
been
on the show before.
You will watch this.
Well, he's the one I took the keys from the Y job from.
Oh, okay. Okay, you know Mike.
I had to be nice to Mike.
Awesome guy.
Yeah, super great guy. And then something interesting's happening here. What are you doing here?
Oh, okay. My son, who's 22 now, going to engineering school in Kettering, we just got involved in Boy Scouts with some folks through school. Went to a school called St. Regis, a Catholic school. You marry an Italian, you're going to become a Catholic. You know? I was raised in Minnesota. I was raised a Baptist. You know, don't argue with that. So at any rate,
hey, this woman fed you.
That's right.
She kept you alive in college.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And she's wonderful. Anyway, so at any rate, met a bunch of great dads. Same time with their kids. We decided that there hadn't been a Boy Scout or Cub Scout and Boy Scout troop in that school, so we're going to start our own. So we had 8, 9 dads with our sons, and we started a troop. And what was cool about it is this is going through a period again. All these scouting, all these laws and regulations and all that. We said, we're doing our own renegade thing. So we created the Dragons. And so we got the kids and dads. And what was cool, every dad and every kid, it wasn't like a babysitting service, went to every event we had. And because we were small and agile, we could do special things. And being associated with Corvette, one of the first things everybody wanted to do was to go down and see the Mammoth Caves, but visit the Corvette Museum, which is wonderful. You guys, some of you have been here or haven't, an outstanding environment, and specifically for kids. So we went down there, and actually they allowed us to, you know where the floor caved in?
Yeah.
That's where we camped out. And that's where our sleeping bags were, right around that circle. Imagine that. So I'm sure, you know, that whole region is full of caverns. So,
camped
amazing.
out in a car museum?
Camped out.
Terry, we got to try that idea here. We're going to set up tents in here.
Hey, I will tell you.
We'll get membership on it.
These kids did not fall asleep till about probably 2 or 3 in the morning because it was so exciting being around this car. And you know what? These guys will remember that the rest of their lives. And what's fortunate about it, what's cool, I'll tell you, the guy on the left there, Sean Santee, He was our first Eagle Scout. All these guys became Eagle Scouts at the same time, except for Sean. He was the oldest. He was kind of the mentor. He's right now, I think, deployed in Afghanistan. He is a special ops ranger, if I'm not mistaken. So the guy is awesome, and we were very proud. I had to acknowledge him, and the dads had a hand in forming some real leadership qualities.
Say a big thank you for his service.
That. So yep, absolutely.
Big thank you for his service.
So thanks, Sean.
Yeah, you got a good advantage. I mean, my camping when I was a Boy Scout was in the Pocono Mountains. I mean, there's no comparison.
Yeah, very cool. That was very cool.
Yeah, good uniform you got there, by the way. So what do we got going on here?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Mr. Cafaro comes back in the picture.
Mr. Cafaro, and then Jerry Palmer.
It's a big Italian theme with you.
I think so. Well, I keep running into Italians that have been very influential. I tell you, John, I'm proud to say.
You like the gabagool.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, right now I kind of consider him kind of the
godfather
godfather of design of the design staff. I would tell you, Jerry Palmer was our mentor because he was the design chief when we both came on board. John worked for him for quite some time. Developed the seafood, the clamshell. That was John's sketches that came up with that. And then I came in on 82, really, after the short stint. But also, this is when we've all either been, at the time I was the current, or John was the current design chief for the Corvette studio. Me to become, this is Jerry's office. He's executive
This is
director
now Ed's
of design.
office. Right?
No, Ed's office is just north of there. The executive director for design, that was his office at the time.
What do they call that whole wing?
Well, the executive wing.
Executive, but it's like a mahogany row.
Oh, mahogany row. Okay, yeah. Some people call it mahogany row. I just call it where executives are. And what's cool about that is if you look at the wood desk, that was made from the same mahogany that they used back in I think all the way into the maybe early 50s, mid 50s, to do those the body shapes, to put either the forms they put the clay on, or to represent packaging. They had the same craftsmen out of the shop to try they could make anything. They could even make furniture. So all this furniture, it's all built in, like Frank Lloyd Wright kind of professed. Everything was built in.
Arrow Sarin?
Arrow Sarin was the architect on this particular site. Ed asked us probably just before the 4th of July break, Minnesota. At General Motors, we take a 2-week break right at 4th of July. He had us in the office just before then, got the team together, told them we were going to do this car. As I mentioned, Bob Boniface, also a director and colleague, just an awesome designer who's leading Cadillac right now. Had already been working on one as well. And so from that point, we took a 2-week break. And I gathered the team. I mentioned Sang-Yup Lee, who was involved with the Velite, the Buick concept, was on my team. Involved with the C6, was with me at the time. They started sketching, went on break, and so from that point there to the auto show, which was the following January, we had this running prototype. So sketch, which by the way, he did the proverbial napkin pen sketch in the airport. Might have been LAX, I'm not sure. Pen sketch that really generated the front theme because I gave him some overview of what I felt the car should be. Look at the 69, look at aircraft, look at robots, look at racing, and come up with something new that definitely is unmistakably a new Camaro. And he does a wonderful pen sketch, and that kind of led the charge for the
By
theme.
this time, the car we see outside, your car outside, by this time, was it complete?
Oh, my car?
Your car.
Oh, yeah.
Your personal car was complete.
Yes, it was complete.
You and your team worked on the design of this car, and then on the engineering side of the fence, who was the chief engineer on the car?
Al Oppenheiser.
Al Oppenheiser.
Yeah.
At the same time that you and Al were working on this car, what was Al working on in his garage?
He had a 69 Camaro as well.
So in the office, he's building a new Camaro. He goes home, and what is he doing?
A Camaro.
A little dedication.
That's passion.
That's passion. Passion or a sickness?
Yeah,
Either one.
You can equate. I think maybe it's not really dedication. It's dedication. It's just something you're compelled to do. Just like I was compelled to get in that car and drive to California and something that was going to blow up. I knew it was going to blow up, but you had to get there.
Yeah.
And it's more than just a machine, and everyone in here understands that.
Oh, yeah.
It's more than just a machine, more than an appliance. You live it. And the other thing I told my design team, just to that point, it's not just a machine. design not a car, but design an individual. Sounds kind of weird, but that's true in that these things have to have a personality and a machine or a mechanical soul, because that's how I saw them as a kid. You know, you saw those caricatures. It wasn't like a car. It was like a character that could move and animate. That's why I think the Transformer movie was so popular and just was successful, because those cars were literally characters, and kids related to them.
So, I think the individual, I mean, with Al's a particularly good case, because he's kind of the mad scientist that says, oh, a 556 horsepower supercharged Camaro with magnetic ride control, not enough. I think we should do something else. Hence, we have the C28.
Yes. Actually, Al is definitely inspirational in that, but I will tell you, as I recall, again, I was not there, but I think Mark Royce actually said, hey, you know what, you guys, you've got wonderful foundation there.
Yeah.
No kidding, I want you to do whatever it takes to make that get the fastest lap time of any car, unquestionably, undeniably, and it wants to be on the Camaro. So no holds barred. I want the lightest and fastest car you can do. I'm going to support you on it. And so that's when he gave, I think, Al and myself, and among other many people, a mission to do the car over there.
Okay. Camaro opened doors for you. You got to meet some very interesting people. That's Al right there.
Yep, I was just there this morning. That's at Donut Derelict's.
He's the one closest to the mirror there.
Yep.
And then you got to meet somebody else.
Yep. Chip Foose was down there. He said he wanted to sit in the car. I said,
yeah.
I'd be honored to have you sit in that car.
And then arguably, the Camaro, the ZL1 specifically, got you to meet probably one of the most important figures in your life. I wonder who.
Oh.
Where did you and I meet?
That was at, I want to say VIR.
VIR,
right,
yes.
That's right.
Yes. That was a
very influential figure.
Very influential figure, exactly.
Yeah, and VR, that was a wonderful experience. But you know what I remember most, other than my discussion with you, was the guys taking doing burnouts. You can probably see them on YouTube. Whoa, that thing could cook them. But not only that, but the track, it was just blistering on the track. But again, going back to my roots, hot rods and all that, it's like that was pretty impressive.
And that is a very technical track.
It is. Oh yeah.
You guys brought some ringers that day. That was incredible. This is a guy, an engineer, Aaron, who.
Aaron Link.
Yeah, you think he's just a normal engineer, kind of a geeky guy.
No, kid. No, you think he's a kid.
Race car driver.
He's a kid.
Yeah, he looks like he's 10. Very annoying.
Unbelievable. The guy can make that car dance. And are you aware they cut down the oak tree?
Yeah, I think it fell or something like
that.
Well,
there's this off-camber corner that kind of goes around and up, and then off-camber corner, people crash. I mean, people that are experienced. But anyways, you get around that, and you come around, and there's this, you go up a hill, and correct me if I'm wrong, then there's a hard hook to the right.
You don't see around.
But it's around this beautiful oak tree. So you see the oak tree as a landmark, and you kick the car out, and hit the, you hit the brake, and then you stomp it, and then hit the wheel, and you cross over it, and you go under the tree, so it's kind of scary.
It's incredible.
You're watching the apex, but this eye does something unnatural. It bends, like a chameleon, and you're tracking that tree going around that corner every time. For some reason, I don't know if a storm took it down, or I don't know, but it's gone.
I think it was a storm that brought it down. It was like sacrilege. I mean, the car, the
flag
was half-mast for many months on that one. Because it's like there's an elevation change you can't see going around the turn, and then you come down another elevation change.
That track can be scary. Seconds. You got to pay attention on that track.
And when we did it, it was wet. It was rainy when we did that one. And then here's your iconic work. Now once again, you're back in the movies.
Oh yeah. This was in the GM Design Dome, but Michael Bay came to GM, I guess, because he went to Art Center. Again, more connectivity.
He went to Art Center?
I think he went to Art Center and he was in the cinema, the cinematography department. And he said, I remember speaking with him. He said, I always remember, I love looking at you guys' work. All the cars, they were so cool. So the guy is a car, and you can tell by the movies that the way they filmed them, the way they animated them, that he understood cars. I mean, I'm just speaking from my perspective. But he came to General Motors and said, I want to use your cars. And had a discussion with Ed, and they got together. And I remember them coming through the studios, and we showed them several cars. The new Camaro concept car, that's what attracted him initially, I think. And we showed him the Stingray concept car, which was an early precursor to to the Stingray. You can see the corner of the 59 Stingray here. I remember doing the sketch, actually during the when we were working on the C6, of the actual little Stingray graphic and giving it to our very talented logo people. The guy's name is Dennis Finos. I said, take this sketch, can we make a logo out of it? Actually, if you look at some of the early photos of the development work on the C6, you'll see little Stingray mock-ups, paper mock-ups on the side.
You can kind of see it
then it led
here.
Well, yeah.
In one of these, yeah, you can kind of see it there by the third stoplight.
Yeah, well, this is sometimes I refer to this as a car modeled around a logo. Ed Welburn, we did some scale models. We talked about skunk works. Well, sometimes if we have a little downtime or a little bit of free time or some extra time, some people would do these little scale models and some things. So after we did the C6, we said, hey, let's take some time here while we're catching our breath and ready for the next project. Let's do some, what a future Stingray might be. Because, I mean, again, going back as a kid, what would you always love to do? Do a new Stingray, you know? Because it had been, out since, mid-70s. What was the last year? The 8s? To help put it in perspective, it was 22 and 21-inch wheels. We went from 21 to 20-inch wheels and proportioned them around, so we made a smaller, drivable one.
And here you are with, I believe it was Ed's in one of these pictures.
Yep,
there he is.
Ed's standing
picking
to
this
my
out.
left there. And this is
Clay
when
Dean is in some of these pictures.
This is when we were asked to kick off the 7th generation Stingray, and one of the things that he said, and this was going back even to the C6, we're not going to do a Stingray unless the car warrants it or lives up to the expectations, not in just styling or the exterior design or interior, but the whole car.
But was there more of an impetus at this point? Because 2009, chronologically, that concept car was 2009.
Yes.
When did you start working on the C7?
I'd say started sketching around that 2010, 2011.
So there was a little bit of an influence from that.
Oh yes, there is some influence. Yeah, there is some influence, particularly in the rear and some of the forum vocabulary.
Yeah.
But concept cars, you really push it. They're a little bit maybe over dramatized. But you got to get real, not only in terms of maturing of a design theme, but then reality comes into play, and you have to integrate I mentioned about serious functional aspects of performance. One of them is drivetrain, packaging people where they can get in and out and ergonomically use and be able to see out of the vehicle, and then perform well in the airstream with relative to aerodynamics. So very, very influential. And to me, the trick is here, if I might say, is to me this difference between styling and design. Design is where you're approaching a very serious problem, and you develop solutions for them that are executed beautifully. That's what I like to say. So it can't be just something that merely meets a function or performs well. That's the difference. It has to look fantastic and very artistic too. I think that's the magic of the automobile. When
you and I shot, we actually did a development film on the C7, and we shot this in the Heritage Center. You had shown some really graphic examples of function when you said design to solve those issues, and there were like 2 or 3 that were interesting.
Yes.
What were they?
Yeah. Well, I think relative to aerodynamics, really the 3 things you have to look at, because this, all vehicles today have to be high performance aerodynamic, or at least they should. Some are better than others. Corvette, Camaro, those types of cars, it gets even more serious when you can approach top speeds with 2s in them, And so 3 elements of aerodynamics that we kind of focus on, there are all sorts, are primarily the slipperiness or the CD, cooling or flow, and then downforce. And all of them play a factor in stability of the car and the overall performance. So I would tell you, every square millimeter of these vehicles are developed in the wind tunnel, or we use CFD in the computer analysis of them. And the other thing I like to really talk about a little bit too is, or just briefly, is you think of it as a pure engineering function, aerodynamics and rocket scientists and guys coming out from JPL. We have very talented aerodynamicists in engineering, but I would tell you, every step of the way, even down those tunnels, and by the way, we have night shifts on tunnels. harkening back to the paper mill, and we've been night shifts on in the tunnel because it's so expensive and so important. There's always a designer in that tunnel, usually working closely with the engineers to develop every little millimeter. I would tell you, every millimeter on that surface has been optimized in the wind tunnel, for one reason or another.
In between the light and the way the hood comes up?
The light shapes, the radii around the lamps, you know, the hood vents, even in the Z28, every one of those louvers, if you look closely, it's hard unless you measure them. They're slightly different angle, slightly different width. The radius are slightly too, not only across, but even from inboard to outboard, there's a slight differentiation because we are going down to every last spec of performance we can get on these vehicles now. It's needed because the cooling requirements, because of their capability, they generate a lot of heat. You have to manage it. Plus, as I mentioned, the high-speed capability, downforce is incredibly important. And because of the tools we have today, the digital tools, not only do we have an intrinsic knowledge, but we can visualize them to have just incredibly optimized performance.
There are two things that stand out to me about this car. One, kind of general. Look at this color car. I think everybody just kind of soak that in. This is a dark color Corvette. Then take a look at some of the other colors, like the red. Well, let's go back to this, or the silver. Totally different vehicle.
Yeah.
Totally different.
You know, color plays an incredible.
But more so on this car than any other car.
Interesting you say
like
that.
you look at a red Corvette, like, man, I gotta have me a red Corvette. It's got a certain look to it. But you look at some of these gray colors or darker colors, the car is more mature, almost more European.
Yeah, it is kind of. I think we have all those kinds of influences, and but I will tell you that in large measure that is due because I mentioned about the sculpting, the math, and the digital sculpting, both hand and working with computers. This car probably has more in and out sculpture. And you can see a little bit of that on the Z28 as well. The Camaros have so much more sculpture to them, in and out, and I attribute that to not only just fantastically talented designers and sculptors that I have working with me on that, but engineering that allows us to enable those realities of putting a car together so we can work together to make these forms work. Oh yeah, more so, I think more so, and even the manufacturing guys that stamp and make, make the actual panels.
Yeah. Now, speaking of sculpture, you and I spent a lot of time talking about sculptures of taillights.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm sure everyone in this room has some sort of view on the taillights of this car. We're not going to have a debate about this, but I want to point something out. You guys can go online and take a look at the episode we did together where Tom actually sketches out the taillights and walks through the logic of why the taillights on the C7 are shaped the way they are. So you can see the sketch here. I didn't bring the sketch in because I didn't want you people to steal it from me.
I think I was reverting back to my childhood in that sketch.
It's funny you say that. This sketch is from 1989.
Yeah, oh wow, yeah.
This is your concept of a Corvette. Look at the taillights on this and look at the taillights on that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I see the differences in there, but what is consistent, and this is one of the directions I try to give very few items of direction to my team, and for the new Corvette, for the Stingray, it was very few. One was it has to look like a Stingray, a lot of form and surface. I want you to throw everything out, except for it has to look like a Corvette. And the other thing I want you to have, the other thing I said, no more round taillights, but I want it to be dual element. So you look at those sketches, that sketch, it's twin element. And it's where they're located. And there's something about a Corvette relative to the rear, and again, this is a design interpretation, the rear composition. It's not only the taillights, it's how the fenders are wide and the canopy sits on it like a jet fighter. And then even the plate, where the license plate is positioned. Those relative, and then the big fat tires, of course, and the exhaust, how all those elements are arranged in general, whether you had round or square taillights or whatever, there's something about it to me that says, hey, that is a Corvette configuration. It's like family members, brothers or sisters, whatever. They're different, but yet they look the same. You can tell they're the same genetic pool, and they're each unique in their own way, but there's a relationship to they're features
Yeah.
that are consistent. So, and I think the other thing too is that if you do it correctly, it translates over time. We look for the timeless elements that, we talk about the 69 Camaro and the new one. Around one of the first prototypes. This didn't happen just once. It happened, I want to say, maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Driving to work in one, and you feel really proud that you're having one of the first ones. And they're called captured test fleet vehicles, and they assign them to different folks that have worked on the car. Sometimes not, because you want clear feedback. But going down one of the roads, and early in the morning, obviously bus stop, kids waiting to go to school, see a group of kids. And they're talking, and they're doing the phone thing and all that stuff, and they see this car, and they go, oh. And not only do they stop and look and point, but as I'm going by, I got the windows down, it's warm, kid goes, Stingray! And he's pointing at it. It's like, we got it.
Absolutely.
That's stuff that you can't plan. So again, that harkens back again right to when I was a kid. And if you can capture the heart of a kid in something like that, because I think I'm living an experience of that, it'll propel you through life. If you're an enthusiast, you'll remember that moment. So I'll tell you, to me, that's what it's all about. It's not that you get accolades and you get magazine covers or these embarrassing interviews, or they kind of put you on the spot or whatever. No, it's seeing that kid, recognize what you've done, and you see a smile.
Yeah.
That's what I really work for, is a smile.
Well, it ain't bad when you get accolades.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So your alma mater is?
Art Center.
Art Center.
Yep.
Here we are at
Very
Art
thankful for
Center.
that. Mm-hmm.
We've got Stuart Reed, who is the chair of transport design.
And the book here, the author of this Corvette, I don't know if you guys have seen this. Little plug for
my
Peter.
previous
That's
Inside
awesome.
the MotoMan studio guest, Peter Brock, is here.
Yeah.
He has the unique distinction of having the first car recognized as a national historic monument.
I didn't know that.
He designed a 60,
Really?
after this car, he designed a 63 Daytona Coupe, which was the first ever car that is now like in the same pantheon as the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's
He's an
very
Art
cool.
Center grad.
Yep.
And then there's you, and then you're hanging out with some deadbeat over here. I don't know who he is.
Yeah, Stuart. But there's a few car guys up there.
Yeah, and then here's you and Peter Brock, both Lifetime Achievement Award there.
Yes.
So big congratulations on that from your alma mater. So you said something earlier about how whether you drove a Ford and you got your Mopar buddies and you're kind of all the soup kind of goes together.
It does.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Did you ever do any teaching? Teach any classes? Mentor any people?
Over the course of my career, I've gone to Art Center and CCS.
One of your students sent me these pictures.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, what's that?
That's a Diora.
Yeah.
And that is one of the models I remember building as a kid.
Yeah. And what is it based on?
Well,
a Dodge.
Yeah,
Dodge.
I was kind of hesitating.
I'll forgive you.
Okay.
You're a Chevy guy. I'll forgive you.
But again, wow.
Who's the guy?
Yep. Oh my gosh.
So,
Oh my gosh.
the student that sent me this is by the name of Mark Trossel.
Oh really? I know
Yes.
Mark real well. Yeah.
So you are the guy that runs the design for Corvette. Does anybody want to take a wild guess what Mark now heads up, what car he heads up? Dodge. Close. Viper.
Yeah.
He is now the head of design for the Viper. So the guy who's designing Corvettes has influenced the guy that is designing Vipers.
Uh-oh.
And it runs even deeper.
Oh,
The
really?
guy who designs the motors for every Viper since there ever been a Viper, his name is Richard Winkles. His entire collection of cars, Pontiacs and Chevys.
Really? That's amazing. That is amazing.
So it all comes together through you, sir.
It is a circle. Oh my. I'm not sure if I believe that, but that's awesome.
It's true.
It's awesome.
It's true. We'll get Dick Winkles in here and he'll tell you.
Okay, all right.
And with
That's
that,
awesome.
thank you very much for joining
Sure.
us today.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us.
So I'm going to have you guys pass your questions to the side if Marielle or Sandy or anybody is there to get questions. But I want to tell you guys a little bit about what's coming up. I almost feel this is kind of heresy to tell this audience what's coming up next week. I'm not really going to tell you the overall theme. I'm just going to say we have the world champion drifter Vaughn Gittin Jr. as my next Inside the MotoMan studio guest. He is a week from today on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we're doing not one, but 2 shows. It's a busy weekend for us next weekend.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. We've got the man who heads up Galpin Autosports, also of Pimp My Ride fame, Bo Buckman. He is going to be my guest, along with Henry Ford III. So Henry Ford's great-grandson is going to be here as well. There's some sort of trivial 50th anniversary thing going on next week.
I think I'll come back for that.
Yeah, they'll love you there. Bring your Mustang. And
I don't know what that thing is now.
In the afternoon, we're doing something unique. We're having the Haggerty Classic Car Valuation Seminar, where we're going to talk about classic car values of American muscle cars, so Camaros as well. We're going to talk about not just the values, but I'm bringing in, and this is where it gets even more incestuous, my old Team SRT teammate from Targa, Newfoundland, Rob Paccioni. He's going to teach us about how to campaign your car, your classic car. So whether you want to take it to Laguna Seca, you want to do Targas, you want to do chump races. Yep. He's got all that experience. Awesome. And we're bringing in the founder and publisher of Haggerty's Price Guide to tell us about valuations, and we're bringing the consignment director from Mecum Auctions to talk to us as well.
Oh, that would be very
And our very own Leslie Kendall is going to give us the context and history of American muscle cars.
Oh,
That's all next week.
Great.
So you guys should join us
and
join us via the live stream. And with that, Marielle
said, you know, what if we took the center out of that bow tie? How much would we gain in terms of CFM? And as it turns out, so they took a Dremel tool, I guess, and they just hogged out the center, there, the gold out of it, and they measured it, and it was increased, I would say, around 3 more CFM of flow. And when you are looking for every morsel of cooling and flow, that was huge. And so from that standpoint, and I will tell you that the bow tie, just like any logo, that is sacred. And so to do something like that is pretty monumental within a company, to modify, you know, in terms of an iconic image that's meant to be consistent around the world. So got together, they presented to Ed Wellburn, who's really the keeper of the keys for that as well, from a design standpoint. Agreed that, again, if function is our moniker, gave the go-ahead. And so hence was born the term, this part, and it's known as the flow tie, not the bow tie, but the flow tie. Because that's what it is, it's true. And it's amazing the attention that it has drawn when you talk to people, well, on any of the outlets or whatever. They all want to talk about the flow tie, and even talking to the kids that I've talked to that see this car, they want to talk about that, they want to look at it, and it's amazing.
If you guys want to know more about that, I actually was fortunate enough to talk to Al Oppenheiser last week at the New York Auto Show. We're going to be putting out a podcast next week where he gives you a nauseating detail, as engineers do, of that very topic.
Well, you know, you can edit that. You have the
Oh
power
no, no. With Al, he's great. You never want to edit with Al.
No,
he's so passionate about the performance of these cars.
I think that's what when I talk. That's a good way to point passion. I think there's passion from everyone that gets involved in these products.
Oh, no doubt about it. Even to your communications guy, Monty, he's completely passionate about these cars.
Monty is passionate.
Yeah. So, here's an interesting question.
Yes.
Mark Greenblatt asks,
Okay.
and I'm not going to edit this.
Okay.
There's a little build-up here. GM production cars have become much better looking in recent years after so many years of boringness. What changed?
I think a number of things. I think one of it was, I think companies as well as people, you go through periods where I think you're searching. I think the business is incredibly complex. I think back when that was happening, I think also too, you know, going global, there was a lot of distractions, a lot of influence. You talked about Studio X. Sometimes you need quiet time where you don't have coming from an artist perspective. I think anything, and I think you need to be creative in anything, whether it's engineering or marketing or whatever. You need the quiet time to think and focus and make some mistakes without sharing them necessarily. Then you learn and do what's right. So, and again, being there for part of that, but maybe not all of it, I think two things, one, or several things. So once I think, referred to as kind of finding the corporate mojo, but also I think the leadership has a huge role. And I think part of leadership's responsibility is to kind of clear the decks and, you know, make it before you have a quiet time to develop stuff and have a good philosophy. And I think visions are important. You talked about the Stingray concept, the Buick concept, the Cadillac concept. Those are very important vision-wise to help pave the way, because a model is so incredibly important in that. And that, you know, we talk about engineering, marketing, manufacturing, design. Everybody sees the car from a different perspective. That helps to focus so everybody goes down the same path. And I think we had more visionary statements as we came forward. I think technology helped us. And I also think leadership entrusted design and the team more so to express themselves. I would tell you, as long as I've been with General Motors, the Camaro and the Corvette, these current generations, I have never have experienced as much freedom and support from a unified support from the corporation.
Wow.
And I think that in part, now that's just my perspective, I'm sure there's other aspects to that, but coming from a designer that has,
so there's
been
less
involved in these.
meddlesomeness. There's less they
I
come
think
in saying,
maybe
well,
less. I think less questioning, plus the enablers from technology, and I think the determination, and I think also trust. Trust is huge.
Big thing. Speaking of trust, Marty wants to say that he loves the new taillights. Hopefully that's of the Corvette. I don't know,
Great.
probably the Camaro too, because you did
Yep.
both. Chase asks, are you designing a 6th gen Camaro?
A 6th gen Camaro.
Yes, and can you? I've got some pictures coming up of those.
No,
But
the
you have
current
to
one,
pay
current,
extra
current,
for
the
that.
current one's pretty cool. Should we? Do we need to do another one?
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
There's nothing wrong with the one that's out there, but you guys go about 10 years or so and then design a new one. So I was wondering if you're still going to follow that record.
Well, I really can't talk too much about what I'm doing right now, you know, but I guess I always kind of put the question back, if you were in my position, what would you do? You know, what would you do? What should we do?
Well, you'd make a V8 rear-drive Buick convertible. Of course.
Well, maybe along the way there's at some point, but you know, I think, you know, we're you know, to the point earlier, we're going to do the right thing for the car, but it's a wonderful vehicle, and you know, there's it's certainly inspirational, and going forward, there's all those things that come across your path that you can utilize to take to the next level.
Okay. So Art Center is not far from here, as you know.
Yes.
We have a good relationship here at the museum with the folks at Art Center, Stuart, Frank, Jay, those guys.
Yes.
And we had told them about the event. They promoted it to their base. So
great.
Was anybody here from Art Center? Any students? One student? No, actually nobody came. Wow.
We went there the other night, actually, in the evening, kind of walked around a little bit.
Well, you know, it's more Art Center students should have come, because Jay, the guy who kind of organized it for us, he was willing to pay the admission for anybody that came.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for the students that came. Not you guys, but the students.
You know, I bet, you know, I will tell you, I know right now is a very intense part of the curriculum and year for those guys. I had to go down to the museum, or do I get my project done so I can, you know, graduate?
Which leads to this next question from Luis. So let's say you want to get into car design. Luis asks, what kind of an income is there in car design?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I will tell you, General Motors has been very good to me. Able to support a family and send, so far, 2 kids to college, and I have a 17-year-old who announced to us about 2 months ago that she wants to be a doctor. So fortunately, she takes after her mother's side, you know. She's a sharp one too. It's been a wonderful adventure. And you know, really, what you find, it's not about the money. It's about all we've been talking about here, you know. I think you asked me to put these pictures together, and you don't think about it as you live your life and you go through. But as I started putting these pictures together for you, laying them out and seeing them on the, you know, here on the computer, but when we were putting them together, there seemed to be some kind of logical string or thread that went through all of it to get to me to where I am today. And it wasn't because I wanted to make a lot of money, I'll tell you that, you know. And I think people have told me, and I will tell you, I will just share that. So, the money will come. Do not worry about that. Live your passion. That's what will carry you through your life, your whole life. Which it's long, but like that. And just kind of add to that. I will tell you, this is the truth. We're in the studio working on these cars in clay, and I have music crank. I have big speakers I brought in from home because I talk about serious fun. We're cranking dubstep. We're cranking Frank Sinatra. We're cranking Hair. You know,
that's an odd choice.
Great stuff. But what we'll say, we'll grab a cup of coffee. We'll say, you know what? When you stop and think about it, we have a range. We have guys there that are 21 years old up to, mid 50s. That's me. Can you guess? Anyway, so then we'll say, hey, you know what? We have as much, and I'm telling you, it's not easy. It can be very difficult at times and very stressful, and because it's subjective mixed with objective aspects, and it creates a lot of sparks, which adds to the energy. And we never go home saying we're boring. And I will tell you, we say, hey, you know what? We don't have as much fun as doing this now as when we first hired, when we were kids doing stuff. I mean, I don't know how many, I feel very fortunate that I'm able to say that, And I think that kind of speaks to the passion that's inherent here that drives you, cross country, drop what you're doing, not knowing what's going to happen. You got $1,000 in your pocket, and you go out and try to make it into a design school in Los Angeles, So yeah, it isn't, so yeah, you want to make a good living and all that, but.
So you had no idea when you broke down in Texas you'd end up in a couple of blockbuster movies.
Yeah, no idea.
No idea.
No idea.
Which brings us to our last question. I believe it's from Cam. Oh, well, there's one more question here. Well, this is an interesting, you know what, let's ask this question. You worked on Pontiacs. Ron kind of asked what was it like working there?
In Pontiac?
Pontiac, yeah.
Pontiac was awesome. Worked on Firebird and Bonneville's, and also I was actually involved with the Aztec early on.
Oh, really?
We just got through everything. Thank you and good night.
Well, we talked about earlier about the corporation in kind of a turmoil, tumultuous. Yeah. That was right in the epicenter of that.
Hey, and you got experience in designing spaceships, and that definitely is one spaceship, isn't there? Donation before he gets in the car. It's a museum, we're a non-profit. We got to make money somehow.
You can sit in it, absolutely.
And speaking of making money, we have a gift shop downstairs, which you will be sitting in front of, doing autographs. And there's things, if you want Cam's brochure, if you guys have stuff out of the cars you want to bring, Tom has very kindly agreed to sign that.
And I'm not going to charge $5 either.
15.
No.
Come on. No. Yeah, Mary says you got to pay for your airline ticket back somehow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask you to sign my own things here for me.
Oh, I'd be honored.
So we'll do that downstairs. So if you guys want to join us, we're going to go downstairs after this for an autograph session, and then there's plenty of stuff that there's like models, cars.
We walked by there, and Art said we're coming back to the gift shop.
Oh, you got to check it out. Absolutely.
That's again harkens back to there's a child in all of us, and the kids always want to go through the gift shop.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure you've got a big collection of scale model cars at home.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Next time I come to Detroit, I'm coming to your Bloomfield. I'm coming to the Bloomfield. What's the Thrill Seekers?
Thrill Billies.
Thrill Billies. Yeah. I'll bring some country music. How about that?
I do that.
Okay. Once again, Tom, thank you very much for making the trip.
Thanks
Big round of applause for Tom.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, George.
So once again, we'd love for you guys to join us next week with Hagerty Valuation Seminar and World Champion Drifter Vaughn Gittin Jr. Follow the museum on Petersen_museum at Twitter or Petersen Museum on Facebook. MotoMan TV, all one word, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find the museum at Petersen Museum and Instagram. Once again, guys, thank you very much for joining us. And to our streamed audience, thank you once again for joining us for Inside the MotoMan Studio.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, does that go okay?
Oh, you did great. You really did great.